LobbyCon starts at 11. Yeah. Yeah, that's or BarCon. BarCon is what they call it. BarCon overdose. Yeah, BarCon starts at 11.
Well, you saw me. I left at 11:30. I didn't go to sleep till like 1:30.
Yeah, I was up a while.
Because we've got the TW2 thing. The tea social from 12 to 3 in the morning.
We can have cooking
Allison said
next year.
she's got like the hour.
Yeah,
or
the
maybe
grills
it's the
and-
days.
Where are you going to
No, I think it was Allison. She's got an yeah. There's an hour.
We moved from a hotel convention to
have some snacks.
we're at to the science. Yes, the Aeronautical Training Center at Trident Technical College. It's a fairly new facility that Boeing helped to build. It's got airplanes and helicopters and hangars on it. It's really cool. It actually has 2 stories of convention space in it, and so because of that, we moved to we have a different convention hotel that's fairly nearby. It's a suite hotel, and it has like a nice patio area with gas grills and all that kind of stuff. So which
where is
North Charleston.
Oh my God, my favorite city in the whole world.
It's gonna be our 10th anniversary next year.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh my God, I love Charleston.
I know. Well, we've had them before back when we were in the Marriott.
We
Mhm.
actually the second book I published was historical romance, and it was Revolutionary War, and there were 3 books in a series,
Why are you asking me?
and they were all in and around
I'm the boss of
Charleston,
this con.
up around Spartanburg, the Walnut Road,
okay.
and involved the Battle of Chalfont, and
Oh, okay.
and I'm a huge revolutionary.
Well, I know Gail Martin, who's a regular at our convention. She has Deadly Curiosity series, which is all based out of Charleston. So she always comes a day before a convention so that she can. Why aren't you on this panel?
They've got some panels.
You're gonna heckle, I know.
There's some panels at Army Hour and some panels at
A man who has probably more experience than any of us up here.
all the ones that start.
And so she comes like a day before a convention to investigate different areas. They do plantation tours, or they'll go downtown Charleston just to get information for her next book. She's a lot of research.
If I had to move out of Atlanta right now, Charleston is a city that I would choose. I love Charleston.
It's so expensive to live there anymore. Well, the problem is that with the interest rates going up, the housing is going to go down, but then the interest rates are up. So it's bad.
I've got a nice eye on the cardboard box.
They got a house up for sale in the corner by my mom and dad's house.
I got it. There's a cardboard box under the bridge right now. I got my eye on it.
Oh, listen, I have a character that's living in that box right now. I'm telling you, I do. What time is it?
It's almost 9.
Oh, I can't.
We got a minute.
Hey, am I the moderator of this panel?
I don't know. Who is the moderator of this
I
panel?
think. Oh, you
Okay.
Yep.
He's on that end now.
All right.
Yeah, I guess we'll, wait, it's not quite 9 yet, so wait a few more minutes, see if she makes it down here.
She's like Mountain View, Lakeview.
I didn't even know this room existed.
Oh, this has been the
until
gaming
now.
room for 1,000 years.
That's what I thought. I thought I remember gaming here.
This used to be gaming. Actually, I think it was RPG
That's why I've
gaming.
never been in this room.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they put all the gaming over at Holiday Inn except for some upstairs, evidently, from what I heard. So, yeah, when I saw this, I'm like, wait a minute, Lakeview's a gaming.
Yay, you made it!
Yeah,
Hey, Miss
I'm
Thing.
fine.
Hey.
I went to the lake shore by accident.
I should have
They
waited.
should not have 2 rooms with such close names.
Yeah.
I should have waited because
Yeah, Lakeshore's a big thing, big room.
Yeah, I was like, I went, well, Nancy's that way, so it must be okay.
Right.
Let me-
Half the streets in Atlanta or Peachtree something. Yeah, right at 9 o'clock. Perfect timing.
Woohoo!
We'll
Every
go
so
ahead and-
often I get it right.
I looked for you all day yesterday, sister.
What?
I looked for you all day yesterday.
I didn't get here till late. I had to work, and then I got here right before Mara's panel, she managed to shave an hour off our drive time. You know, she was driving my car. I'm like, oh, thank God I have this thing inspected regularly.
Ran into horrible traffic. coming
She is
into
a
town.
very good driver.
Down
I am
95,
just
like
not
outside
used to
town.
somebody else driving my car with me in the passenger seat.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I feel like I'm in control if I'm driving.
Yeah, well, she gets bad motion
And
sickness,
you're
so.
at my mercy.
All right, no, we're good. I was waiting for it to. You got to have a second to get settled. Have your coffee. Yes, we're all still half awake. All right, so this is cons from the other side. This is a panel about
Ghosts.
what it's about. Ghosts, exactly. Yes, exactly. Ghost Con. If no one's been before, which is appropriate because I don't really feel I don't feel quite alive yet today. I don't know how the rest of you do, but yeah, 9 a.m. on a con weekend is
I
rough.
have a pulse. I checked.
Right,
Did you?
I think,
Okay.
I think
That's a
I'm
good
being
idea. I should have done
punished
that.
because my manuscript is late to John, so John's like, ha ha ha. So I
You-
apologize.
You get all
to
the
of
first
you.
thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Tell him
panels.
you've been
Yeah.
working on marketing all weekend. See? Did you do this?
Excuse me. All right.
I didn't write the novel though.
So Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it does. All right, so that's what we'll start with is introductions, and we'll start at the far end down there. If you want to tell us a little bit
I'm
about
not
yourself.
ever going to sit at the end again. I am not. I'm going to move over there. You have to move.
Okay.
No, you don't have no leg. Oh, yeah, well, there you go. Oh, my name is
Sitting like a
Nancy
soldier at
Knight, and I've been I've been a writer, published writer since 1983, longer than many of you have been on this earth. And it has been my privilege to meet and
Maybe him.
be with so many wonderful writers over the years. This is my 25th year as the director of Writers Track at Dragon Con, and you know, if when you get to my age, which is I'm this age now, and next year it'll be called ancient. You just go
You're
ancient
only
from
like, what, 52?
there. Yeah, right.
We're going with 52.
We're going with 52. Thank you. I appreciate that. But you look back over your life and you see turning points that were happenstance maybe, and becoming the director of Writers Track at Dragon Con, I really wanted to do it, but I was in a writers group, and they would sit around and say, okay, one of us has got to be the director of Writers Track this year. And that was back when previous directors were over the con. And I said, oh, I'll do it. And so I did, and I took it from 6 panels to a full weekend.
Yeah, we do like, what, 24
I
now?
do, yeah,
And
I
then,
do really about 30 hours of
Yeah,
programming.
So many.
And it's been one of the best things that ever happened to me. I've met so many amazing writers and so many amazing fans, and life has been a blessing because I've been a writer over these years. I have books out, Berta, and I write this series. It's the by Honor Bound series, and it's a YA, and it's purely a YA because we decided we didn't want to write any sex, so we have this wonderful cast of characters that are going to go through this series. And this is a movie that my friend Yasi and I wrote and was produced, and it's free on Amazon Prime now. And it's kind of a soft horror. It's called Evil Little Things, and it's about evil dolls.
I think that phrase might be redundant. All dolls are evil.
Evil
Well,
dolls.
Yasi believes that. She's terrified of dolls.
A movie, even.
people deal with their fears in unique and interesting ways.
Listen, we rode around in a car gathering stuff for that movie, and there were dolls, doll heads, just rolling around in the car. And I said, "You're afraid of dolls, and you got this doll mobile?" I mean, really?
There's, as a little sidebar before we move on to the next one, there's a place in Atlanta, if y'all know, called the Doll's Head Trail. It's a hiking trail that is decorated with some of the strangest stuff you'll ever see. It's
No,
a
now I need to find it.
yeah, it's a quirky little experience.
Me
So,
too. Me too. I need to take her out there.
well, it's nice to meet you, and thank you for being on the panel. And who's
Janet Iantuano. I actually got my start at Dragon Con. I was an assistant director for Star Wars programming for about 4 years, and I'm trying to think if they were concurrent I was actually one of the founding directors of ConCarolinas, and I worked on the board for 12 years. 12 years on the board, and left the board to start my own convention in North Charleston called All Types of Media Arts Convention, or Atomicon. And we'll be doing our 10th anniversary next year. I stayed with ConCarolinas as a volunteer director and worked registration and did some training for my convention that I wasn't getting all those years as dealer's room and treasurer and all the other stuff I did. I also, for the past 20 years, have been a room manager for the Star Wars University at all the Star Wars domestic Star Wars celebrations, and worked for Lucasfilm Pavilion at San Diego Comic-Con. So I have a little bit of big convention experience, giant convention experience, and then obviously the smaller conventions.
I am Seska Small, and I really did get my start at Dragon Con because it was the first convention I ever went to. Then I volunteered for several years, took a break, joined the Army because we all have miscreant ideas. So after my somebody told me it was an unexcused absence, and I'm like, I don't need one of those. But I came back and volunteered again with Dragon Con. A couple years ago became the Fantasy Lit track director, but I've also volunteered at other cons. I think one that's now closed in Savannah. I'm not sure exactly what happened with that one. I have my theories about why it closed, but I'd already moved away. So as well as volunteering with LibertyCon, and I did a lot of, well, not convention, but it was group organizing and community life stuff when I was in the Army, and as extra duties. They went, oh, you could do this. And I have spent time as a podcaster and a bookseller. So many hats, lots of weirdness.
With feathers. All right, my name is Vanessa Junta. I got my start at cons actually as the guest liaison for a small writers workshop slash conference called In Your Right Mind, which is still going on up in Pennsylvania. It's run by the Alumni Association of the alma mater where I got my MFA. But right now, I wear lots of hats. I run the writers track at Frolicon in Atlanta. I am Nancy's second. I got bossed into being Nancy's second. Come talk to me if you want to hear that story. So yeah, voluntold. Actually, not even
I got
voluntold.
suckered into being a director.
I got introduced as her assistant when she was introducing me to people, and I'm like, what? So I'm her second. I'm also the senior programming director for Multiverse Convention, also in Atlanta.
So just a few things in Atlanta.
Just all the things. I'm so tired. So yes.
I hope for the sake of your commute, you live in Atlanta.
I do indeed live in Atlanta. Yes.
You want to mention your books and the writing tribe?
Oh
maybe?
yeah, I guess I should mention my books. I also write. I write primarily urban fantasy with horrific elements under my legal name, and I write smut under another name. So yes. So I have cards with
That
me.
Frolicon in
if
She
you
you.
want
writes good
to-
smut.
If you've been to Frolicon, you know why she writes
Yes,
it.
that is the kind of smut I write. I write Frolicon smut. But what else? Oh yes, and I run a writerly support group on Facebook called the Writing Tribe, and we do lots of virtual events all through the week. We do co-working writing sprints. We have a critique group that goes every 2 weeks. We have writerly discussion every Sunday evening on a topic that we vote on during the week. What else do we do? We have all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, but that's just for the people who are currently in the tribe. So yes, so that's me.
Thank you. Yeah, and the writing track group, very active, very fun. So I'm Jesse Adams. I'm one of the founders and chairs of Multiverse Convention down in Atlanta. We've been around.
I got a boss on each end of this table.
We're boxing you in.
You know, there's this word. It's called no. We're not. This is a group of people who aren't very good at it, but I do suggest you practice.
Oh, that's
it.
the first
No,
question
I
I want
say
to
no
discuss
to
is gonna come.
everything else so that I can do conventions.
I also run. I'm one of the folks who runs the workshops track at MomoCon. If anybody's been to that one, we just got done with that last weekend, and my feet still hurt.
Bless you.
Yeah, 5 days. It's like 5 days, 14 to 16 hours a day. It's brutal, but we'll get into why we do these things. Anyway, that's who I am, and Vanessa works with me. I've just met these folks this weekend, but we have a really good mix of experience and different types of cons and stuff at the table, so that should make it interesting. I wanted to know from each of you, and we can go back down this way if you don't mind talking first again, Vanessa. I want to know how did you end up in your? I wrote it down as in your leadership position. I feel like I need a parentheses S at the end of that now, leadership positions, because no one seems to just do one thing. So how did you find yourself there? There's always a story about no one ever intended
Oh,
it.
okay. So I guess I am going to tell that story.
If you want, yeah. How'd you get your position?
So I'm gonna talk about the I have both been bullied and bullied. I've both done the bullying to get into a position and been bullied for other positions. So for Dragon Con, I was basically yeah, actually the whole thing. I didn't want to go to Dragon Con. I met Nancy through a mutual friend at a completely different event in a restaurant, and we had met anyway, it doesn't matter, that's really long.
We had met,
At the Borders thing.
but the thing was, I know that woman. I know
Yes.
that woman.
Okay, so let me back up.
Okay.
All right, so we had originally met at this. There was some authors. I used to work for an ebook publishing company, and some of my authors were going to be interviewed on this video podcast thing, whatever it was. And I went down to support them at a bookstore in Atlanta. I went down there. I was like, I'll support them. So I go chat, and I'm chatting, and it was Nancy's current roommate I was chatting with, and Nancy was the one doing the interviews. So we're chat. She was like, "Oh, you're a writer. You're an editor. Blah blah blah." And she goes, "You should come work at Dragon Con because Nancy runs the writers track, and here's her email address." And I'm like, "I don't really want to go to Dragon Con. It's very large, and I don't want to do that." Thank you. Put it in my pocket. About 2 months later, I'm at this social event at a restaurant, and we have a mutual friend who introduces us, and we're both like in our heads going, where do I know that person from? So finally, later in the night, we're sitting and we're kind of back to back, like the tables. So she and I were kind of back to back, and I was like, oh my God, it's the woman from the interviews. And I'm like, this is where I know you were from. She's like, yes. She said, you should come to Dragon Con. Here's my email address. And I'm like, thank you very much. The next month, we're at the same event, and she's like, are you going to email me or not? And I was like,
sounds like Nancy.
yeah, I know, right? So I end up volunteering at Dragon Con on her team. And then the second year, we're walking around and we're picking up badges for the track, and she's picking up her badge, and she's introducing me to all these people that I don't know who the hell. This is the head of security, and this is the head of programming, and I'm like, hi, and she's introducing me as her, which is assistant director, essentially assistant director. And after this, she introduces me to Richard Hatch as her second, and finally, as we're walking away, I'm like, did you want to talk to me about this second thing? And she's like, oh yeah, you're my second. All right, well, that's done. And so I was bullied into that. And then the situation, which was awesome. Let's just be clear. It was, I needed to be bullied into that, clearly. So thank you, Nancy. Yes.
You're welcome.
So how
And
I bullied.
many years later. How many years have you?
So I've been your AD for 10 years and been doing Dragon Con for 12 years, I think 13 years. 2020 was my 10-year anniversary because I got a pin in the mail because I couldn't go to the damn meeting because there were no meetings because it was 2020.
That was my favorite part.
So, but I really wanted to go for the meeting where I get things. So, so where I bullied was actually for Multiverse, mutual friend. It was before Multiverse even started. Multiverse started in 2019. And in 2018 at Dragon Con in the bar, because of course that's where the writers are, a mutual friend of mine introduced me to somebody who was at the time the programming director. And I basically bullied myself into the writing track directorship for Multiverse. So So I was both bullied and I bullied. Yeah. I really did. Thank you, Nancy. Because I'm not at all pushy.
And don't we all know that?
Yes.
My turn?
But,
Yes,
but
I'm
it's
sorry.
been,
Okay.
it's
Oh, no,
been
no,
like
no.
half an
I don't
hour.
want to step on you. I'm not.
No, it's
so,
all you.
it's been 12 great years, right? I mean, people are reluctant to come to Dragon Con because of the size, but it's like any big city. There are little pockets of
It really is
delight.
like many cons going on at once. So
Mhm.
my coffee actually kicked in, and I just remembered I'm director of programming for Deep South Con next year. So
Is that the one
That's-
happening in North Georgia?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be fun.
so it's new, and that was like a, hey Jennifer, you need some help? I'll let me know. And she's like, sure. What do you want to do? And I went, I don't want to be your director of fantasy programming. And just because I've been doing that position for so long, and you don't. I guess my worry is that it would get stale. That
Yes.
people would be like, "Hey, you're doing the same programming at both events."
Yeah.
So then she's like, "Okay, well, why don't you do guest services?" Okay, cool. Then she's like, "Actually, my guest services for my programming director wants to do guest services. Do you mind trading?" Because this isn't a 30-minute window while I'm at work, and I'm like, because I spent so much time planning guest services. So sure, I'll do it. I'll just scrap and burn everything. She's like, I'm so glad, thank you. Then she went, wait, you were joking, right? Yes, I was. Having said that, I am very ADHD at times, so I will get very topic focused, and you'd be amazed what I can do in 30 minutes if I properly motivate it. Yes, God juice. My rise to power, as one friend jokingly called it, of being a director at Dragon Con was a little bit more contentious, actually. So my predecessor, you have to be careful with social media, right? Everybody can take screenshots. Went on a tirade attacking several authors, both across the political spectrum, some of them for not being correct, agreeing with her enough, which is the talk of fanaticism, by the way. If you ever have done any psychology into that, that is one of the key signs that you're dealing with a cult or a fanatic. Is you don't support it enough. And so after many times and publicly saying, well, I don't care if they're the guest, I'm not using them, and some other things that happened in the background. This is all public. You could find it if they hadn't torched the Facebook page. She got removed. I got hayed into it. And it was literally, I had very little knowledge of what was going on. I was actually not even in my department. I was working for Sue Phillips in sci-fi literature. And so about 86 days before my first Dragon Con as a director, they moved me. And it started with, hey, can you go to a meeting and just take some notes for me? Okay. And people are going, why are you here? We would have taken notes for Bill. I don't know. He just asked me to do this. And I said, yes, because, well, he asked nicely. And then it became a, hey, we would like you to do it. And I had to hit the ground running pretty hard because my predecessor, who had argued and tried to fight for the job, had done absolutely nothing. And I mean, not a room layout, not anything, nothing. And so, in 86 days to plan a con, especially because for Dragon Con, you have to do 24 hours of programming minimum. And they have to be unique and different. But, so that's how I got into doing that. But I've also been the type of person who's fascinated with how pieces work and how to optimize them and get the best for everybody out of it. So I had a really weird position.
I feel like all the stories are really weird.
Oh, yeah, but I like this is the one Dragon Con hates it when I tell it
Yeah. Oh, yeah. for
because
sure.
they don't ever want anybody to know about it. And I'm like, guys, it was all public
It was-
record, very public. And the track second went on a tirade about how I was not qualified, and I had because I'd left and joined the army, which is why there's a joke about unexcused absences.
Yeah. Actually,
I'm feeling a little deja vu because I went to my first Dragon Con in '96, and it was the famous Mark Hamill scandal. And some of you probably weren't born.
Just that one.
Okay. Big Star Wars fan. And I went to Dragon Con. This was my first time. I went by myself, actually. My daughter was about 4 years old at the time. And I went to see Mark Hamill, being this big Star Wars fan. And the fact was, he was not signing anything Star Wars. He was there for Wing Commander. You had to buy the Wing Commander game and get this ticket in order to even get him to sign. So it was a huge thing with Star Wars. So after that convention, I opened my mouth and said, "Hey, you should do this, and the other thing." And Kathy Bowden, who was the program director at that time, was like, "Oh, well, why don't you volunteer then?" Good for her.
Good idea, Fairy. Hate you.
Good for her. And so I was like, "Okay, I'll volunteer." And before I knew it, she was doing the same thing. This is my assistant, Janet, and she's going to be in charge of doing this. Okay.
Right.
And so while I was doing that, I found out that this group was going for a Worldcon bid at Charlotte, and I'm like, well, that's close to Charleston, and I think this would be 3 hours.
Close
It's not
enough.
bad.
Closer
And
than Atlanta.
closer than Atlanta. And so it's like, I'll volunteer for this because this is something new, and I'm really not really versed in that side of convention running. And Herb Koch at the time found out I was an accountant in another life, and he's like, "Well, we really need a treasurer. Would you be our treasurer?" Oh, well, okay. And in that process, we developed ConCarolinas because they wanted to have some kind of established convention to help them with the bid, and that's kind of how ConCarolinas got started. And so I ended up by default becoming the treasurer for ConCarolinas as well. And that's James knows, he was there. I got to learn the world of the sloths and how it's very weird. And the fact is, I think the first 3 years here at ConCarolinas, we had to pay like $35 or $50 in dues
The right to be worked.
to be for the right to be a director and vote and to work. Yeah. But I thought, it was $50 because we were paying more than the people were paying to come to the convention and enjoy the convention. And I believe it was about the first three years. I think we finally were able to put the kibosh on that. And so, and so in that process with ConCarolinas, I got started, and I did treasure for about 3 years and didn't really want to do that very much. I did programming direction for 1 year and said that was not what I wanted to do. I did fan groups, fan tables, and then I did the dealer's room for a lot of years. I was assistant chair for a year. They wanted me to be chair here, but I felt like the chair needed to be somebody who lived in Charlotte, not in Charleston. And so I was, thank God, never chair. But I learned a lot from my work here. So what I didn't want to do when I started Atomicon in Charleston, that actually started as an empty nest thing. My daughter and I actually started together. It is actually set up based on the bylaws and everything of ConCarolinas. It could be run a lot like ConCarolinas, but I just haven't gotten anybody to actually want to be on the board. So I am the sole proprietor runner of everything Atomicon.
You are the god.
I am the god of Atomicon.
It's a monotheistic.
It's at least if something happens, the buck stops here, literally. And so it just and really after I'd gotten some experience, it was one of those things where I think once you start volunteering for conventions and you start in that, you tend to. It's very difficult for me here being just a guest and not being involved. It kicks in. You don't know what to do with yourself, really. But the Star Wars celebrations, we went 1 year as just attendees, and the line was so long. And it's like, I'm going to volunteer next year, so I don't have to wait in that line to get into the. I mean, it was purely that's the reason. And when they saw that I had all this other previous experience, Mary Franklin from Lucasfilm said, "Hey, I want you to work on. I have this. It's called Elite Squad. And so I have these people that work as Lucasfilm liaisons between the convention runner and Lucasfilm. And so, yeah, and so I've been in that ever since. And that's a unique, you get to see a unique side of convention, of the big corporate conventions from that side.
Yeah.
They still have the same issues the little cons have. They really
Wait.
do.
Are you saying people are people?
Yeah. They've tried things like Reed Pop, especially. They pay their quote volunteers because they think that that's going to make them more reliable and show up
It's
when they're
so
supposed to. It
Psychologically, it's
doesn't.
the opposite.
It hasn't worked. So yeah, but yeah, I was basically voluntold because I opened my mouth up. So I actually have a sign at our convention that says, "Before you complain, have you volunteered yet?" Yeah, it's right in the
I wanna
front when you
borrow
walk
that.
in. It's like, "Before you complain."
Oh, I'm
Um,
very good at.
Yes.
Cool. You should totally do that here.
And yes, I throw that and getting people to really commit and volunteer. I found over the years, I don't know if y'all have had the same issue, is that it's very difficult to get. They might commit for a couple hours, but to get them to commit, even just for the 8 hours between a 3-day convention, it's going to become very difficult to find those people that will be there.
Oh yeah. When you find a good volunteer, you should treasure them.
Oh
And
yes,
I think that's how a
I've
lot of
had
us
some
end
good
up in
ones
these
over the years.
positions.
I spoil my volunteers. I have a Keurig in the back of my tracker room.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This was actually the first year your dad had to grab me, make me do something.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
I just like walking home, girl, come here.
Girl. I mean, I have these two are life eternal members, but I also have a couple other eternal members that are there every Friday volunteering at the vendors room, which is the hardest to get volunteers for, especially with the book ladies having to schlep those books back and forth, and they love it. They do it, and so yeah.
My first convention, writers convention, was actually writers. It was 1981, and we had started Georgia Romance Writers, and we heard that another chapter had a conference, and so we decided we would have a conference to make a little bit of money. How are we going to do that? So my best friend at the time, Sandra Chastain, was the president of the organization. I was the vice president, and we had a few volunteers. I mean, we were brand spanking new. And one of our volunteers was Marion Collins, and at one of our meetings, she said, well, they had editors at their conference. Maybe we could get some editors. And this was the days before cell phone. Marion spent $750 on phone calls to New York. And we ended up with 10 editors and a bunch of agents. Our first conference, we had 100 people. We called it Moonlight and Magnolias, and we found this beautiful piece of a silhouette artwork for our logo kind of thing.
It is beautiful.
It is, and it's an amazing conference. It is all about being a writer, and it doesn't matter. We just pulled away from Romance Writers of America because of controversy at that level, and so now we're on our own. But the thing of it is, it's about writers, and that's my focus, and has been since the beginning. I'm a founding member, and I'm the only founding member still around. There's another one that's still alive, but she is totally not involved. So I've been doing conventions since 1981, and it has been a huge gift to me, getting to know people. And I was talking actually to the vice president of Harlequin. He called me on the phone and he said, well, I have this editor and this editor and this editor and this editor and this editor. they all want to come to your conference. And I said, so what's the problem? And he said, well, do you want all of them? And I said, absolutely. I'll take any you're going to
Right.
send. And he said, oh, well, I think I'm going to come too. I want to see what this is all about. And his name was Horst Bausch, and he's very German.
It sounds
I
like
would
he's
hope
very
with that
German.
name.
And his wife, who I called fondly Mrs. Horst, spoke almost no English. And I happened to have a board member whose husband spoke good German. So he took her around the city of Atlanta.
Oh.
She had a lovely time. She loved Atlanta. So that's my beginning in conferences. And after my first year at DragonCon as director, when the writers group called Dark River Writers, and it is an amazing group of all published writers in the Atlanta area, and we were meeting once a month at that time. So the next meeting, they're saying, oh, okay, who's going to be the director of DragonCon next year? Oh, director of Writers Track. And I said, oh, I'll do it again. They never had anybody volunteer after they'd done it once. And so they said, oh,
What
okay.
I find amazing is that they asked you guys for volunteers. Because
Yeah,
now
well-
DragonCon does it like super secret scroll committee.
Well, and so I went to the chairman of DragonCon that year, and I said, look, if you want continuity, I will be your writer's track director. We don't have to bounce it back and forth, because a lot of them wanted to come to DragonCon just to have a good time. They did not want to be tied down to a room. And so we went from 6 hours of programming to 24 the first year I was director. And I said to the chairman, I said, can I do more than 6 hours? He said, your track, do what you want to with it.
Was that he who should not be named? He
And-
liked giving that answer.
Mhm.
Which one of these he's who?
Another one really,
Right.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
if you
Well,
know
I was
any
there
of the
during that- I was
history of
during
DragonCon, you
right
know who
at
it
that
is.
Yes.
So I ended up kind of hijacking that position from the Dark River, but they didn't care. They didn't want to do it. They just wanted to come and have a good time.
And it sounds like you were serious about that continuity thing.
For real.
Been there a little
Yeah, I
while.
was kind of serious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, seems like it.
And over the years, I've tried to improve the programming. I've tried to put really different kinds of workshops in that. I have a guy that's retired military. He was the colonel at the Pentagon who briefed the general, who briefed the president every morning on world security matters. And he comes and does panels for us, or workshops for us. He did one called "How to Fight Like a Girl."
Be
We did
mean
not
and
have
bite.
a lot. We did not have a lot of people attend that, but it was one of the best workshops we ever did. And he's very military, very organized. He prints out his slides and all of this, and gives a handout. And at that one, it was how movies and books and
Are you talking about John? Are you talking about John?
John.
John.
Yeah, and it's look, a woman can't fight like a man. So
we fight
he was
different.
talking about strategies that would make a woman not necessarily the equal, but better able to fight in a situation where she might find herself in a fight. And so that hence the title, "How to Fight Like a Girl." And it was not the powder puffery kind of thing. It was serious, how to fight like a girl and win. So he's done many panels or workshops for us. In fact, I was just talking to him night before last about what he's going to do this year, and he's not sure. But whatever he does, I give him free rein. And so that's one direction. Kevin Anderson and Becca do a workshop that's really based on a Robert Heinlein article that he wrote. So that's always an amazing thing. Those are kind of standards. And then we have a couple of other standards that we do every year. What is it? One that I like to do every 2 or 3 years is about 101 interesting ways to kill off a character. you know,
That sounds
and
fun.
and that you just pull interesting people who write interesting books, and they come up with all these suggestions. So I've tried really hard to come up with different types of panels that would work for a real diverse group of people, because you may write this kind of stuff, you might do gaming, you might do erotica. I mean, there's so many kinds of writing.
Because we never know what we're going to get.
And that's one of the-
And people say, well, do you still have room for me on a panel? Well, yeah, they haven't closed yet for people who want to be a guest at DragonCon. I think they just did. But until you know who's coming, how can you populate a panel?
Yeah, you got to know what you have to work with.
Yeah.
It sounds like you put
if
in.
if I populate a panel and I've got these really great people on this panel, and then somebody greater all of a sudden is coming, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Call somebody and say, I was going to use you on this panel, but
That's why I don't
but-
tell anybody. I let Regina do that shit.
yeah,
I think that's-
I do that too.
That's one of the
I
things
do
we
that.
learn along the way
I
is,
do that.
in these
I
in
let
these
Regina
positions
do
is that there's certain stuff you
put
just
people
don't
where I want
necessarily
them to
put
be,
out there publicly.
They choose.
And so thank you for that. My brief origin story, and then I want to get into some of the meat of like behind the scenes con stuff, and I'll have some rapid fire questions for y'all. My origin story is an interesting one, which is that so we started Multiverse. The first one was in 2019, so we started the planning in 2017 after I had been to exactly one convention ever. Really didn't honestly know that like the scene existed or anything. I was in Austin, Texas, working on a case, and ended up with a free weekend. It was like I hit up Facebook local. I was like, "What's going on?" Science fiction convention. Been a huge fan my entire life, so I was like, "That sounds interesting. I'll go see what that's about." I had a blast. I got to meet and hang out with Howard Waldrop and met some other folks that I really like. I had admired for a long time. I was like, I did not know like this is awesome, but I didn't live in Austin. I lived in Atlanta, and I was like, I started having ideas for what would make the exact like type of convention that I would want to go to. So then I called up my friend Allison, and she had never been to one before. So we, with zero experience, started planning the whole thing. It's been one of the only things that like one of the things that we
Summer child.
Learned very, very quickly.
right, but we had an awesome first year because that's largely because we spent 2 years planning it. We knew that like we've heard the horror stories of people. Yeah, that's gathering a really awesome team of people because we knew two things we knew right off the bat. One, we have to give ourselves more than enough time. I've seen people try to do this in like 6-8 months. We're like 18 months minimum. We gave ourselves 2 years. And then the second thing we knew we had to do was let's go find people who know way more about how to do this stuff than we do. Because like we have an idea, we know what we want it to look like, but we need people with experience. So we went and found some and built a really amazing team. So and then we decided we should go volunteer. We should get behind the scenes and kind of see how things work. So the first one me and Allison went to was MomoCon. Volunteer behind the scenes on that, which is a lot. It is a lot to do.
It's like DragonCon Light.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
It's
50%
40,000
different
or this year 48,000 people. And so Allison ended up in the workshops. To tell you how we ended up working there, she ended up in workshops. She's a really, really capable person. So they immediately were like, "Hey, would you like to come back and be like an assistant director next year?" So she, not knowing how to say no, like many of us don't, said absolutely. So, and then it turned out where the workshops director there runs workshops at Multiverse now, and the head of basically everything at MomoCon runs our ops. And they told us that we can't quit MomoCon.
Yeah.
Still quit Multiverse. So we go back
It's
every
like
year. So we have
Mutual assured destruction.
right. So we have like the head of everything at MomoCon, and then you have the workshops track director who's only there because of that person. Then you have Allison who's only there because of the workshops director, and then me who's only there because of Allison. So it's this chain of people that are just like we can't. We
The
all have
con
to
scene
keep
is
doing
so
it.
incestuous.
It really is.
so incestuous.
I
It
will
is.
say that's one of my pieces of advice I always give new authors is if you are outside your room, don't show yourself to be an ass because you don't know who it is going
Oh,
to
we
be.
talk.
Oh no, I watched as
Oh, yeah.
an author in pre-pandemic managed to alienate 3 department heads of Dragon Con in one conversation.
Yeah.
And we all just let him do it. And then he's like, people going, "Hey, I heard there's some Dragon Con people here." And we all looked at him and went, "Yeah, you should go find them."
And it was Regina, Sue, and I.
Ooh.
And when you get on my bad side,
That's it.
I will say though, he actually did a lot of work, and he over the pandemic and came back a very different person.
Good.
He said he spent a lot of time in therapy.
Good.
Siska runs an amazing track.
Oh,
DragonCon is so lucky to have you,
I just tried.
and I'm lucky to have you as a neighbor.
Well, we've really grown that entire floor
Yes.
in a
Yes.
good way.
Yes.
There's been some bumps,
I mean,
Always.
so
That's one something I
But-
wanted to ask
but
about actually is
Siska-
what's
You know what?
you're
Siska,
not going to get a chance
it's
to ask
not
anything.
obvious. Those bumps are not obvious to the fan.
well, that's the key, right?
That's
Like
the
that
key.
is our key. Really, is to tell is if you guys don't know, there's always drama behind the scenes.
Always.
But if you don't know that and can't see and observe it, that's the best handled drama.
It's like a wedding.
and that's not
Like-
easy to do either.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
and
like a
there's
wedding.
always-
You're never gonna like. You don't know what you see. What you see. You don't know what the original
Yeah,
plan was, and you don't know
I
the
always-
crazy shit that
I
happened
always
behind the
tell
scenes.
people that we're city states under siege
Pretty much.
because we like directors very rarely. There's a guy who's like, "Oh, I really wanted to link up with you at DragonCon." He wanted to link up more in the Frolicon way, and he's like, "But I couldn't find you." And I'm like, "I'm a track director. I am wherever my
easy
track
to
is.
find.
You're not
Don't leave the
motivated, and
room.
I'm good. If
That's
you
your
can't
own
figure
room.
that
Yeah.
out, I don't need to." run that.
I don't move. I'm there. That's where I am.
Yeah. You know, you hit something interesting. The writers' tracks, mine, yours, Sue's,
Mhm.
in that little hallway.
I like
We're
to
all
call-
in the same little
I
hallway.
like to call it the pure literature department.
Yes.
Because so DragonCon, we have several multimedia departments that deal with literature, high fantasy, YA,
British.
Brit. There's a bunch of other ones, but we're the pure literature ones. So I will joke that we are the purebred.
We
That's right.
we're the
And-
purebred book hallway.
And the thing that makes us our tracks so successful, I think, is longevity. I have people all the time email me and say, "I would like to volunteer," and I'm thinking, lots
I
of
ain't
luck
got
with
no
that.
space.
Lots of luck with that, because you know
I
what?
literally have a waiting list.
Vanessa has been with me 12 years. I've got one woman who's been with me. The first year I was track director, I didn't know I could have assistants, that I could have staff. And so I was glued there in the room, and I still do.
You're
that pretty
still
much.
glued in the room. What are you talking about?
I don't leave, but I have one woman that's been with me for probably 21, 22 years. And all of the others are, I ask people who are writers, and if you're going to DragonCon and you're a writer, where do you want to go? You want to go to the writers events. So that keeps them in the room, working.
Sing for
Although
you,
there's not much to do. And then we added mentoring to this, and I've been advocating for that kind of thing for years, because at Moonlight and Magnolias, we've had editor agent appointments since year one.
Yep.
And so you can come to DragonCon and you get a 15-minute interview with an editor or an agent
Or an author.
or an icon of fiction. 15-minute one-on-one. Where else can
Yeah.
you get that? Where else can you corner
There's no
somebody
getting a question
like that?
That's
So
why it's in our.
so we try to provide things that you're going to get that nobody else can give you.
Okay, he has
Right.
questions.
Yeah, I wanted
Rapid
to-
fire questions.
Just because I want to make sure we get the other side thing going on, then I'll leave some time for if anybody has questions out there. So what is, if you could think off the top of your head, what is something that you think that as a con runner, that people who attend conventions don't know that you would like them to know? Like something about what you do behind the scenes or what happens behind the scenes that you think that your average attendee is not aware of, that you wish that they would understand? Hard to narrow down, right?
I can say something really
Go
quick.
ahead. Go ahead.
Cons cost money.
Oh yes.
It's
Absolutely.
very expensive
Yes.
to put on a convention, even a small convention, facilities fees, travel costs.
And especially now, since the pandemic, hotels
Yes.
are upping
Oh.
all the costs
It's
to
killing
make up for the
Charleston,
move.
please.
Yes.
It's killing. That's why
It-
we're moving. That's probably one of the biggest things that people don't understand, and they don't understand that. Well, why can't you get, William Shatner to come to your convention? Well, William Shatner cost a minimum of $50,000 plus travel costs. That's why you can't have William Shatner. You know, okay, are you willing to pay $200 to come to our convention?
Yes. Exactly.
Then we can have William Shatner. And so I think for me, over all the years, that's probably been the biggest headache, is that most folks just do not understand how much it costs. Not even in just time, but in money.
Yeah, and hand in hand with that is work. Like it is a lot of what we need
Yes.
volunteers.
Mhm.
And like I
Sometimes those volunteers aren't official volunteers, but they're volunteering and helping.
Yeah.
Like LibertyCon, it's a joke. Everybody there is a volunteer
Mhm.
because
they'll
it's-
draft you into
Yeah.
you'll get drafted into doing something. But
That's
the
sometimes.
thing is, like, I'll often hear people complain about, oh, there wasn't this or there wasn't that. Well, that's because we didn't have anybody to do those things.
Yes,
Right. When you don't have enough bodies to do the work, some of the work doesn't get done.
Mhm.
That's just the way it works. And you know, you can bitch about it all you want, but that's not going to change, right? Like,
And I would also say that, and I've seen it more over the years. Now I'm going to sound like an old person, and I think COVID is kind of hurt this too. Is the lack of commitment. People do not want to commit. They want to be able to decide the day of.
yeah,
that
the
they're
last
going to
minute,
go.
Yeah.
right?
And especially for volunteers, it's very difficult because it's like if we're depending on you, because we have a lot of interactive things like we call make and takes, but they're
Mhm. Yeah.
basically crafts.
We do too.
If we have you slotted to volunteer to help with this, and you do not show up, we cannot have that panel
Mhm.
because I'm
There's-
busy. I
right.
can't run it. And so when you decide to flake out and not show up, you're not only people notice and you're hurting the convention as a whole. It makes the convention look bad because people will be going and like,
'Cause
well, half
we're
the
not-
panels we were going to attend, they didn't have.
because we try not to throw you guys under the bus.
Right.
I think those are the two biggest things.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
really money and bodies.
I think
Yeah.
the other thing is just for organizers, and it was something I read in an article on dealing with grief. When you're dealing with that, people will be like, "Oh, what can I do to help?" That sometimes that person does not. I don't
Yeah.
know your skill set, so tell me your skill set and let me pick, or
offer to do a specific
offered
thing.
or offer to do a specific thing. And I tell this also to young authors and anybody who really wants to help, whether as a volunteer or not, or come in as an author, is let me know what you are willing to do. And there's one guy, I was like, okay, yeah. He's like, do you have any extra panels? I'm like, sure, I have these panels. He didn't want to do any. I finally was like, F you, I'm done.
Mhm.
And I have never offered him or paneled him again because everything I offered wasn't the right thing. And I'm like, well, that's what I got, dude.
Mhm.
Well, we have found that also being a smaller multi-genre convention, we only have so much space. We're very writer heavy,
Mhm. Same.
but we only have so much space for literary programming. And so that where I pretty much say, okay, authors, what kind of panels do you want to do? And then we'll gather them, and then we'll come back and say, pick which one, pick 3 that you want to do. They ultimately always pick the author panels, and it's like, okay, there's 35 of you. I can only have 5 on a panel. You're not going to get on all these authors panels, but we have all these fan panels, and we have improv, shows, and will you be on some of these because we need these filled too? Well, no, I just want to do writers panels, or you have no writers panels that I feel like I would fit into. And so it's always been, but I have writers like John Hartness and
John Hartness is a whore. He'll do anything.
Yeah,
you
he
ask
really
him.
will.
He's my auctioneer.
He's run my page to stage.
He's not
yeah.
even a whore. You don't have to pay.
And Gail Martin.
Does that make him a slut?
I'm trying to think else.
Slut.
Else. Gail Martin, AJ Hartley.
Yes.
These are authors who they get it.
Mhm.
And Gail will be on anything. She'll be on supernatural panel. She'll be on writing fan fiction. She'll be on an improv panel, whatever, because she has learned that all you got to do is be able to get the exposure. And really, you're kind of preaching to the choir at our type of convention if you just do writers panels. You need, as a writer, you want to be able to get those fans who don't know you exist, and they may see you on a supernatural panel and say, "Oh wow,
No
she's
rapid
funny, and I like, she's
rapid
cool."
fire.
Then they
There's
go
no
buy
rapid
some of her
fire
books and
questions
become a
here.
lifelong fan. And that's happened many, many times. But it is very aggravating as a convention writer.
There's
runner,
another
so-
side to that coin.
Yeah.
You say that somebody's on a panel and they get lifelong fans, but people can say things on panels that will ruin them forever.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
I mean, you can offend people.
I've had to like ban a couple people.
Oh, we did.
But
We did.
Like I said, we
had
do
a-
all
We
talk
had a
to each
guy,
other.
and I warned him
He was a
about
drinker.
appearing drunk on a panel.
that's what happened.
And
with
it
us,
was
too.
it was a late night panel, and he immediately started in on I don't even remember what the
It
topic
wasn't even
was.
the topic. It wasn't. So I had a friend in the audience. It was a packed room, and I had a friend in the audience, and she wrote a little note, handed it to me. I was moderating, or no, you were moderating. I was just on
moderating.
it, and she handed me the note, and she left the room. And the note said, "He is visibly drunk, and it's making me uncomfortable, so I'm leaving. But I wanted you to know why."
Yeah, I think one of
And-
the duties of a moderator is to try and help steer that.
And
But
Vanessa got up and went down and said,
Time for you to go.
"Leave the room
Yeah.
now."
I mean, I did it quietly.
Get
I
the
did it.
fuck out of here now.
Okay, that's not what I said. I did it quite because, like, I know him and I've known him for years, and this has often been a concern with him. And I just went to him and I whispered in his ear and I said, it's time for you to go. You are too drunk." And he didn't fight or anything. He
No.
just gathered up his stuff and he left. But he's banned now, right?
He
Yeah.
will never be on a panel for
Yeah.
me again.
But he's
They've
banned
only
from
had
Dragon
one.
Con.
He's banned from
Wow.
from being a guest.
But you're right about the value of being on those panels. Though you can make fans or you can lose fans. You can make yourself a returning guest at a con, or you can get yourself on that blacklist. It can happen. I got one
there's
more,
There's one last thing.
One second, he really wants to ask you a question.
Well, I'm keeping an eye on the time, so got enough time for one more question to get things back on a real positive note for all of us. And then I want to see if there's any questions out here, and then do reintroductions before we head out. So
we only have 8 minutes, so we have
Yeah.
to keep it short.
exactly. All right, so I know it can be really thankless, and we put in a lot of time and a lot of our own money and everything, and we mostly do this as unpaid work. So what keeps you doing it? What's the most rewarding thing about it to you? Like, why do you keep coming back year after year to your cons and doing what you do?
For me, it's 2 reasons. One, I get to meet some amazing people. Like, that is a huge draw for me. I get to interact with people who are way beyond me in my writing journey. I get to, like, literally when I was in St. Louis for my sister's wedding, I had Laurel K. Hampton and her husband, right? So, like, that's not a thing that ever would have happened, you know. But also I get to, the other part of it is that I have kind of a servant's heart. Like, I like serving, I like helping, I like being useful, I like helping someone along their journey, and the opportunities to do that as a con volunteer, as
Or
a con
endless.
runner. Yes. And so, like, it feeds my soul, like in a very real way. So those are my reasons. See, I kept it short.
Yeah, nice.
Community, and in part sometimes duty and loyalty. I'm a veteran and I grew up in a very Army heavy household, so I've always done volunteer work. I've always been part of a community, and it really boils down to, it has opened up some amazing opportunities. It's part of how I got into podcasting. And there are times, honestly, where I will admit, and this is a little psychological, but there are times when it seems like the only thing I understand in the world is fandom. And so that makes it
Especially
even
now.
more part of my community. And that's really what drives it. And I think that is what, honestly, ultimately, all of us want.
Your turn. I'd say
So
ditto to what
good.
she says, except I wasn't a veteran. Keep it short. Yeah, just duty, service, volunteering, probably a little crazy. Our con was only a month ago, so
Hey, you can be motivated. to
I'm
the
like-
same thing for
like in
soldiers without
post-con,
having the bad mistakes.
I don't even know why I do it anymore. I'm in that attitude right now.
I've had those moments.
We love you, Janet.
I know.
The 2 weeks after the con is like the worst. I'm like, I will kill you. Don't mention Dragon.
And obviously, when it was more successful. COVID has hit us hard when we're struggling.
Same.
So when you're struggling, it makes it more difficult, and you try and rethink it, and then something will come up, and you'll be like, okay, now there's hope, and so we're going to try and get it back to where we are again, and so yeah, I mean, but a lot of it is the community.
I guess for me, it's the small things that count. And it's like when I can connect two people, either as writers or a writer and an editor, and then
And then they
then-
flourish.
something
and,
happens
and then
from
they
that.
and then they come back to me and say, she bought my book.
Mm-hmm. I love
It's
that.
those kind of moments when
Magic.
I don't get anything monetary out of that. What I get is a
I
great
really wish
degree
I
of
did.
satisfaction
We
that I
get-
have connected two people that now have a relationship that they both love.
Yes. I love
Yeah, I
that.
think that's a fantastic thing to see. That is really rewarding. And one of my favorites, I think, is when you have people who attend the convention. Like, we end up walking around, seeing everybody, and it's to see somebody who normally doesn't get to feel like welcomed or accepted in their
You're thinking
like
about
everyday
Booker.
life.
You're thinking about Booker.
Kind of.
That's what I was thinking too.
I think on some level we all.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's like that a little bit, but it's great to see people walking around, and that you participated in making this thing happen, and creating a place where people actually feel like they belong. Like that's my favorite thing to see.
Mhm.
It never gets old.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions from y'all for us?
Britta.
When you put all this work into it, it sounds like all consuming while you're planning it. So the day after it's done, what do you
You sleep.
So
You
come back to
sleep.
work.
I feel like sleeping.
Yeah, it's really, really important after con is over to. I think we've all learned this. We might not have gotten it right. I'm guessing everybody had at least 1 year where you didn't get this right, but you got to just plan nothing for a few days after the con. Like, you have to rest. It's exhausting on a level that is difficult to have done it.
Wait, I stopped
3 weeks-
planning?
3 weeks before the current convention.
Yeah, no, I have like a
At least
list.
for us.
I have a list of panels, and sometimes I have to cut things, and they literally go from this worksheet into next
have-
year's
I
worksheet.
have a master
Yeah.
panel.
So
list.
never.
Yeah,
It
you
really
don't- you
doesn't
you don't
stop.
get a
It's year
break.
round.
It's just
So many of
Because-
my volunteers don't have kids, so I actually have to mute Facebook, and because they will put in a whole bunch, and then I have one person who collects all the information that my people put together.
But like for us right now, Multiverse, we're
That was-
considering changing hotels for like 2024, 2025. So even now, our con, our 2023 con isn't until October. We are working on 2026 or 2024 location. 2026. I'm
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how it works. Because there are different sets of things. There's stuff you're doing in the 6 weeks before the con. There's stuff you're doing in the 6 months before. There's stuff we're doing 18 months out. We're inviting our guests of honor for 2024 18 months ahead of time, because
Yeah.
a lot of the folks who want to
Yeah,
ask
You have to
book themselves
sometimes.
out that far. So
Yeah.
sometimes 18 months to 2 years. I don't think there's been a day in 6 years that I haven't done some work on the con. It just
No,
never stops.
it takes as much out of you as you're willing to let it.
Yeah.
But we keep coming back. So
have assistants and a lot of
Oh, yeah.
personnel, because if somebody gets hit by a bus,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's actually a conversation I had to have with one of my directors at Multiverse, because she's very much about like, I signed up for this, so I'm going to do all the things. And I'm like, you have an assistant. Well, I just need her in the room. Well, what happens if God forbid something happens to you or someone close to you and you're not available? Like, she has to be able to step into your shoes. And if she can't, then we have a problem, So like, yeah, absolutely. You've got to have a team. You've got to have a team who's all willing to work together. And that's the other thing. If you've got somebody who is not, if you're trying to get the team to go here and you've got somebody who keeps pulling there, that's a problem, right?
Yeah, that gets into some
Yeah.
the management side of it, which we do not have time to get into
Mm-mm.
today. Anybody out there have any other questions before we? All All right, so good. Nancy, if we can start with you at the end, just we'll give everyone a quick reminder of who you are, where they can find you, what you're selling.
I'm Nancy Knight. You can find me at Dragon Con. And are we signing this afternoon? It's four, yeah. These books and number 3 will be out in time for Dragon Con. So I hope if you have a young person that likes dragons and fantasy, or old people, yes, then these are the books for them.
We are, and actually it answers your question. Our next convention will be May the 4th and May the 5th in North Charleston. Free Comic Book Day and May the 4th. Just happens to be that way. But it is the weekend before Mother's Day. We didn't really get into that. It was when you decide to plan your convention. We did it Mother's Day weekend one time. Not a good time. And we are changing to a new venue. And because we're changing to a new venue, this particular venue requires us to put all our money up front, your facilities fees.
A lot of places are doing that.
Normally, with the hotels, you put a $500 deposit and then you pay after the con, which is good because that's when you get most of your money. So, we just had a con. We didn't make any money. So we got to come up with this $3,900 before October 39th. I've already paid $1,900 of it. So what we're doing, we're trying to do a crowdfunding. It started Thursday and it'll be going through the 31st. Through July 1st. And we're offering very discounted passes and perks, but also for our vendors, we're offering discounted booths and discounted sponsorships and that type of thing. Try and get that money up front so it doesn't have to come out of my pocket. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. Normally we do have guest of honors and all set up by now, but we're worried about, we want to get the space paid off first and put other people later. It is up on
Yeah, where can people
Facebook,
find that?
Twitter, Instagram. I gave Nancy a card with our Indiegogo. It's an Indiegogo campaign. My daughter's a filmmaker. She set it up for me, which is good
So
because
Google,
I'm not really
Google
good at it.
Atomicon, ATOMACON.
Yeah. Yes, all types of media arts convention.
Got it. Thank you. Mrs. Seska, how about you?
Okay, I am Seska. I will. I have more panels coming up. I have How to Destroy the World at 12:30, Women in Science and Tech today, as well as the struggles of identifying as a woman in fandom or a female in fandom podcasting, and then survival for ADHD tomorrow. You can find me on the Blasters and Blades podcast. I'm on social media as Seska Small. On pretty much all of them. I do TikTok stuff, including videos. I'll even talk about conventions. But yeah, that's pretty much how to find me and where to find me.
Thank you.
So I'm Vanessa Junta. I write books. I have cards if you want them. If you like urban fantasy with horrific elements, I've got this. I will be at tonight at 9:00. I am on Is Fanfic the Way to Go over in Keens. And then tomorrow at 11 a.m., I'll be in Keens again for the author-editor relationship. So if you've got questions about how that works, that's a really good panel to come by. You will find me at Dragon Con over Labor Day weekend. You will find me at Multiverse October 20th to the 22nd. Well, really the 21st to the 23rd, because I'm going to be there early and stay late. But yeah. So.
I'm Jesse, and you can find out anything you want about Multiverse Convention at multiversecon.org. I will also be at 3:00 back in here for I Read Banned Books, and then back in here tomorrow morning to discuss ADHD stuff with Seska and other folks.
Ooh, fun.
So thank y'all for coming.
Yay,
Appreciate your
thank
input
you,
and
y'all.
everything. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Good panel.
I have cards if anybody wants them.
Yes.
Yeah, come get stuff from our panelists.
Yes. I'm going to erase this, but I'm going to leave the money. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I have another panel to like.
I just have a friend who prints them for me because he.
I'm just going to leave the money on there for the next person.
It'll choose the next.
Yes, it'll choose its next person. Now I gotta get up to my room and clean up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You've just been
I've
volunteered
just been volunteering
for our science track.
That's how that works.
I forgot my knitting. Sorry, my mouth is much better controlled when I have something with my hands.
Luckily, I do have a film festival director, and he does all that himself. So. And he has Michelle as the consultant.
It was so nice meeting you.
You too. You too.
I've heard nice things about multiverse.
I want to talk to you at some point if we can, maybe during the day today. What are you doing later on this afternoon?
I have like
You know, this year I didn't even bother
Then
because
maybe
people weren't
tonight or
using them.
something.
I'm like, well, why am I bothering
Well,
printing them
I've got
out?
a panel from
If
11
they're
to
not
12.
even using them. But this is actually a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Could be
Yeah.
one or the other. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's actually, it's a really great idea.
he did say it required a little bit of construction,
Yeah.
but
I wonder if they were just dry erase sheets and then he just made them into print cards.
he actually said he bought them past 10.
As 10 cards, huh? Hmm. Interesting.
I told him to send it late.
Yeah, because this new venue, because all the rooms are like this big. So it's like we're. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, well, thank you. Like, well, the big